Hello, everybody. How are you going? My name is Angela Council from Embrace Menopause, and I am the host of the podcast called Menopause Conversations. And we are back for the fifth series of this podcast. Now, I've had a little bit of a break, but I'm back again. And this time, the series is going to focus more on what the impact of menopause has on women who are running businesses, who are leading teams, who are in corporate, because it's something that doesn't get spoken about a lot. And, running a business myself and speaking to other women, I realize how much of the conversation is not being had, yet it's impacting our businesses, it's impacting our teams so many different ways. So that's what's the theme of this series of the Menopause Conversations podcast is going to be all about. Plus, we've got a little bit of a different format running as well at the moment. So you might be listening to me over on Apple Podcasts or Spotify like you always have. But I'm also right now streaming this live into Facebook, hopefully to Instagram. I'm not too sure whether or not Instagram is working right now, and YouTube. So you can catch me on lots of different platforms now. So whether or not you want to watch me or you want to hear me in your ears. So as I said, I'm going to be talking a lot about how menopause impacts women that are running businesses and leading teams. And I know that, if you're watching this and you're probably going, yep, that's me. And you're probably juggling family, you're juggling a business, you're juggling a team, maybe you're looking after older parents, and you've been very, very successful in your career up until now. And then all of a sudden, what comes along? Menopause. And all of a sudden, things just start to fall apart and you're not quite sure what is going on. And I've spoken to many women, and what they tell me is the brain fog. It really disrupts their work, their ability to work, their ability to be there for their clients, for their team. There's a lack of confidence, and that often can come from this, not being able to remember things, not being able to pick things up as quickly as you used to. And then, there's the weight as well. And that was a big one for me, is like a feeling of shame because you don't want to be visible anymore, because you've got this extra weight that you just can't get rid of. And then other symptoms are very common ones like body aches and pains, and that can really disrupt your sleep. And when your sleep's disrupted, then you're feeling tired the next day, you can't think clearly, and it just goes on and on and on. And it's so common for so many women, but we don't really speak about it too much. Kind of keep it to ourselves, and we keep pushing through. And in the past, pushing through probably worked for you, but maybe what you're noticing now, it's just not working quite the same as it used to. So what I'm going to share in this episode of the podcast is a little bit about what is happening and why you're experiencing different symptoms, and some tips of some things that you can do to kind of make life a little bit easier for you. So are we ready to jump in? So let's start with what's happening. Now, you probably know what menopause is. You probably know what perimenopause is. So menopause is when our reproductive stage of life is over. So when you haven't had a period for 12 months, then you're basically in postmenopause. Menopause is kind of like the line in the sand. Before that 12-month period has come, you're in perimenopause, and beyond it, you're in postmenopause. So it's kind of like just this line in the sand. But a lot of things are changing, particularly through the perimenopause stage of life, which can go on for, 10, 13 years. And, when you're in the middle of it, it feels like it's going on forever. But I've got some good news for you. It does get better once you get to postmenopause and the hormones settle down. So as your hormones are shifting and they're going down and they're going up and going down and going up. So it's not just they're all going down, there's actually a bit of a roller coaster going on there. What's happening is, and particularly when we're talking about our ability to think clearer, our ability to sleep, is changes are happening in the brain as the hormones levels are starting to drop, because the brain speaks to the ovaries and there's this communication that keeps going backwards and forwards between the brain and the ovaries. And as the ovaries stop producing hormones, now the brain has to kind of create a new pathway. There's been a super highway running backwards and forwards between the ovaries and the brain for your reproductive life. But when the ovaries are starting to kind of go to sleep a little bit, the brain's got to get information somewhere else, and it goes to the adrenal glands. Now, our adrenal glands are two tiny pea-like glands that sit right on top of your kidneys, and they produce your stress hormones. They produce cortisol, they produce adrenaline, also produce other hormones, so hormones like DHEA, and can produce some of your reproductive hormones. Not the same amount as when you were in your full reproductive stage of life, but enough to keep you feeling comfortable. Now, there's a big problem here, is because many women, as they come into this stage of life, their adrenals are kind of a bit exhausted. They have been doing so much. They have been raising families, running businesses, leading teams, looking after parents. They've been doing so much that there's not a lot of reserves left now to start to produce the smaller amount of hormones that our body requires to keep us feeling comfortable. And this is when we start to see symptoms as our body goes through these changes. And if we just kind of take a bit of a step back and once, well, why is this happening? You know, is there something wrong with the body that it can't cope? And the answer to that is no, it's not. But we've got to look at the life that we're living now. We are kind of the first generation of women who have had very busy lives, who have been working their entire life, who've been raising children, who've been doing it all. And so we're experiencing menopause in a totally different way to the way our mothers, our grandmothers, and our great-grandmothers did. They didn't live the lives that we're living. They weren't go, go, go all of the time. They weren't pushing to be successful. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that at all. I really want to have a successful business. But this is new. And our bodies haven't adapted to the life that we have. It's kind of like a mismatch between the way our bodies have been designed and the life we're living. And this mismatch is what's causing a lot of the disconnection that women have from their bodies and their health. So, as I said, there's a lot of changes going on. There's changes going on in the brain. And as the brain starts to change, because it's kind of got to rewire itself. And as it's doing this rewiring, we can start to feel forgetful, foggy-headed, tired, we're not clear, we might be irritable. All these different things that seem to be worse now than they were before. And that truly impacts your ability to be able to run businesses, lead teams, do your job. Maybe the people around you, I think you're going a little bit crazy. You're not going crazy, but your brain is changing. It does something, and I think this is really amazing. It does something called pruning. And Dr. Lisa Mosconi speaks about this in her book, The Menopause Brain. She's done a lot of research on how the brain is changing as we're coming through this time of life. So I'm fascinated by this pruning that happens. And what happens if you imagine you've got a tree and the tree kind of gets a little bit out of control. So you prune it back to kind of give it shape again. Same thing happens with our brain when we're coming through this menopause transition, is that our brain starts to prune. Now we've had lots of information come into our brain from when we were raising, having babies, raising children, and all of this stuff's going on in our brain, but we don't need to remember all of that anymore. We don't really need to remember how to, breastfeed a baby. We probably don't really need to remember how to change a baby. There's a lot of things we don't need to remember as much. So the brain does a bit of a pruning, and what it does, it actually prunes off the stuff we don't need anymore, because now we're post-reproductive or getting close to post-reproductive, and it puts more energy into the areas that will support us as we go through the next stage of life. And this is where we get our wisdom. Now we see our wisdom coming through, because we do have so many life experiences. And as we age, we've got this inner wisdom and an outer wisdom as well. And so as we're kind of going through, trying to stumble through life, running the business, being there for our clients, being there for our team, if you're in corporate, being able to do what's required of you to maintain the job that you're doing, it can sometimes feel very lonely. And some women can feel a bit ashamed because they think they're not performing the way they used to. Or maybe you feel like you can't be there for your clients. You can't show up as well for your clients. And I know I went through all of this. And I get it. I had so much self-doubt. Even with 20 years experience behind me, I had so much self-doubt because I wasn't thinking clearly. And I know that I wasn't the best for my clients. My clients still got results, but I wasn't at my best. So there were things that I had to do so that I could actually be the best version of me and start to think clearer. Hey, look, I still forget things. I totally forget things. I haven't got something written down or it's in my diary, pretty good chance I'm going to forget it. And the number of times I walk from this room to the next room and think, oh my God, what was it? What was I doing? What was I going to do? And I have to backtrack and go, oh yeah, now I remember. But when I think about it, I used to do that before I went through menopause as well. It just seems a lot more obvious now. But I also know that it's worse for me when I have been pushing through and I'm doing too much. Earlier this year in my business, I changed a whole pile of my marketing, because those of you in business, I don't know about you, but the last 12 months have been pretty tough. There's been a real shift in the market, and what used to work before isn't working quite so the same as now as what it did before. So I did a whole pile of new marketing. I created new ebooks. I recorded new videos, and I spent, the first 6 months of this year really, really, really pushing to get traction in the market. I run free workshops 3 times a year, and I wasn't getting the results that I'd been getting in the past. And so I pushed it and pushed it and pushed it to try and get results. And whilst I was doing that, I wasn't sleeping as well. I wasn't looking after myself, and I couldn't think clearly. Because one of the things is when we're highly stressed and we're pushing out all this cortisol, what it does is it actually lowers brain function, because we drop into the primitive brain, and the primitive brain is about keeping you alive, keeping you away from the tiger. So you don't need to be doing great mathematical sums or thinking strategically when you're running away from the tiger and you don't want to be the tiger's dinner. And the brain is in that mode when you've got so much going on. And this is the key reason why you can't think straight. And then you don't sleep well because, once again, you can't go to sleep because the tiger might eat you. So the brain has basically put itself into survival mode. Other thing it does when it's in survival mode is it stores fat and it won't burn it. Your energy levels go down. Your immune system goes down. Your blood pressure goes up. Your digestive system goes down. All of these physiological changes happen when your body's in this stress mode. And the thing is, quite often you don't realize you're in there because we are so used to working and pushing through. We've done it for so long. And in the past, maybe it worked for you, but it's not working for you now because your body has changed. Because the adrenal glands are trying to make your stress hormones, and they're also trying to make some reproductive hormones, and your body is going, well, I don't know what's going on. And your brain's thinking there's a lot of danger going on. So what can we do about all of this? You know, we can see the problem. We know that we want something different. So what is it that we can do? There's a few things. And first off, it's about becoming a CEO. And not a CEO of your business, because you're probably already there. A CEO of your health. Because your health is vital to the success of your business, to the success of your team, to the success of the job that you have. But we quite often forget about that. We eat on the run, we drink a glass of wine at night to wind down, we don't really do a lot of exercise, we're not sleeping properly. We get up early, work really, really hard, stay up late, keep working. Many of us have been ignoring our health for so long. And the thing is, when we're in our reproductive stage of life, the hormones do offer a bit of protection. But as those hormones start to drop, we lose that protection. Doesn't mean that everything's going to fall apart, but it does mean that we have to start to take some responsibility. Now it's up to us to start looking after our health, to become the CEO of our health and well-being. So how do we do this? What do we do? I'm going to share some tips and some of the things that I did to actually make sure my health was back on track. And then when I did that, my business came back on track as well. First off, I'm just going to share a little. If you're watching me on Facebook or YouTube or Instagram right now, you'll see that there's something up on the screen. So there's a link there to get the Smart Woman's Brain Boost Reset Guide. You can download that and there's some tips in there. But one of the things, the first thing I had to do, I didn't have to do it, but the first thing I did is I started to learn more about the way my body worked. Now, as a naturopath with 20 years experience, I kind of already knew some of that. But I also knew what I'd been doing in the past wasn't working anymore. And I was kind of like, why is it not working anymore? And I knew that genetics played a little bit of a role. Well, I at that time thought genetics played a little bit of a role. You know, and I used to say to my clients, you know, how did your mother go through menopause? That might give you a bit of an idea of, you know, when you know how old she was, that might give you a bit of an idea of what's going to happen for you. And that was kind of the limit of what I used to say. But then I learned the real role, how important it is to understand how your body works. And that every one of us is different. And this is why everyone experiences this time of life differently, different symptoms, different experiences, and why there's no one solution that fits everybody. When I learned about particularly genetic types, and that we all kind of come under broadly 6 different genetic types, but we have a specific, we have our own specific profile within that. And that basically told us how our body was designed, what our biology is. And when you start to live in alignment with your biology, the way your body was designed, things just fall into place. I used to get up first thing in the morning, and I used to do early morning boot camp to start with at about 5 o'clock in the morning. And then I'd start, when I finished that, I'd have breakfast and then I'd start work. Generally by about lunchtime, I had no energy left. And it was a pretty bad downward trend from there. When I discovered that my body was better off having a slow start, sleeping in a little bit later, having breakfast a little bit later, not working first thing in the morning, things changed. Now it would be very rare for you to get me on a meeting anytime before 10 a.m. My mornings are my time to journal, my time to read, my time just to sit outside in nature. And all of my exercise, generally I do in the afternoon because I have more energy in the afternoon. I have a later lunch and then I've got more energy in the afternoon. It's the way my body was designed. So I have shifted my business to work in the way my body works. So my business is in alignment with my body, and things just change. All of a sudden, I've got more energy. I do more work at night. I think clearer at night. I'm more creative at night. The morning, not so much. Bit sluggish. The brain's not as quick in the morning. And that's okay because I'm not doing much. So that was one of the things I did. And then looking at the foods. Now, I generally, as a naturopath, kind of had a pretty good diet. You know, there was some transgressions. I'm human. Yeah, particularly really good quality mint ice cream. Oh, don't eat it so much anymore. It used to cause a lot of pain. And also chocolate, dark chocolate, and mint is even better. Anything with mint in it. I love mint. I have fresh mint tea every single day. But as well as understanding the best times for me, I also then learned the right foods for my body. And I understand that my body is a longer digestive system and it's very slow metabolism. And rather than thinking there's something wrong with that, I now understand it and I work with that. So I don't eat every couple of hours like I used to. I used to teach all of my clients, eat every couple of hours. You need to do that. Not true. Some people do. Some people have a faster metabolism and they definitely need to be eating every couple of hours. I don't. And if I am eating that often, I am more likely to feel sluggish and I'm going to hold weight. So now I understand my body. So I have basically now built my business is totally built around this. Is what I teach women. I teach women how to understand their bodies. But I've also structured my business in that way. I do most of my work at night, never work before 10 a.m. in the morning. And I take a big lunch and later in the day, and I do my exercise in the afternoon. So by understanding how my body works and now having a business with that flexibility, now I'm lucky I run my own business. I have that ability to do that, to shift things. I mean, it's my business. And if you run your own business, you've got the ability to do that too. Now, sometimes to start with, it's a little bit uncomfortable because you kind of have to say to clients, no, we're going to be later on. But this is also part of setting boundaries, because if you're going to be CEO of your health so that you can be the best CEO of your business, it's important that you do what's right for you. And clients will adjust. So that's kind of the first thing I did, the main thing I did. But other things that you can do if you don't fully understand your full biology yet, there's just some simple things you can do. Number one is the alcohol. Really sorry to say this, but women have less capacity to process alcohol when they're in perimenopause and postmenopause than they did when they were younger. It influences your brain. It holds weight. It causes many of the symptoms that you might be experiencing. It doesn't wind you down at night. It stops you from sleeping. You might think, oh, I have a glass of wine and I sleep better. In fact, you don't. Alcohol sedates you. Sedation is not sleep. And so when you're not sleeping, your body's not recovering. So then you wake up the next morning and you generally need coffee to keep you going. So alcohol, sugar, it's not great for you. And when I'm talking about sugar, I'm talking about processed sugar that's in, the processed foods. I'm not talking about fruits. You need to drink more water. When we drink more water, our blood flows better. Eating foods, nutritious foods, vegetables, plant foods. And yes, you can still have animal. I'm not saying that you have to be vegan or vegetarian or anything like that. Yes, animal protein's there as well, but still make it the majority of what you eat coming from nature, from plants. It's going to give you the nutrition. And when you've got the nutrition, your brain's going to function better. And then mindfulness. Taking time. Whether or not that's journaling, meditation. For me personally, it's pulling on my hiking boots, putting on my backpack and going, I'm lucky I've got National Park at the end of my road, and I disappear into the bush. That's my time. When I get really, really overwhelmed and I can't think straight, if I can, I go out and I just start hiking. And it's amazing how clearer your thoughts are when you're in nature. And when I was sharing earlier that earlier this year, I was really busy creating all this, new marketing, new lead magnets and everything. And I simply wasn't moving as much as my body needed to. I would still, Sunday was always, it's pretty much a non-negotiable for me that Sunday is my hiking day. I always hike on Sunday and it's a long hike. So about, 3, 4, 5 hours. But I wasn't doing it during the week as well. And my body really started to feel that. Because I was focusing so much on getting these marketing programs going, getting the workshop ready to go, that I forgot what my body needed was to be out in nature and to be moving. And so I got really, really stuck. I couldn't think clearly. I was forgetting things. As soon as I got back out moving, life changed. My business changed. So what I want you to know is that menopause has got a really bad rap, and we kind of blame everything on menopause. Oh, you feel like that, it's just menopause. It's just menopause. There's nothing you can do about it. All women go through it. Menopause is a stage of life. It's not a disease. It's not a diagnosis. And there is so much you can do to start to feel better. And it can start with really simple things, like taking time to eat. Rather than eating at your desk, actually stepping away to have your lunch or your breakfast or whatever. Step away. If you can, get away from your desk and go and sit in a park or out in nature. Drink more water. Many of us are dehydrated. And just move. And it doesn't have to be running a marathon. Some people, they need to be moving a couple of times a day, short, sharp bursts, but others, longer exercise is better for them and later in the day. Others, great in the morning. And you will probably already know. You will know whether or not you feel better when you get up and do something first thing in the morning and that gives you energy for the rest of the day, or if you're better, if you have a slower start and then your energy builds and you've got more energy in the afternoon. We can get into habits which are not necessarily good habits. So I used to be in the habit of doing early morning boot camp. And I would have said at that stage, oh yeah, I need to exercise first thing in the morning. But if I'm really honest, it was a struggle. It was totally a struggle. And I didn't have any energy. I was getting more and more injuries, particularly lower body injuries, ankles, knees, hips. Now that I exercise in the afternoon, I am stronger, I am fitter, I am more balanced. I can see the difference. So it's just about making that shift. And you might not be able to do it every day, but starting to see, is there something different that you could be doing? Knowing that when you start to look after your health, that your business, your team, your job role is going to improve because you're showing up as a better version of you. Don't let menopause slow you down. So as I said, on the screen right now, if you happen to be watching me live, there is a link and that will take you over to the Smart Woman's Brain Boost Guide with a few tips in there. If you're listening to me on the podcast, I will pop the link into the show notes for you. Hope you enjoyed this. As I said, I'm going to be doing this live stream to Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube every week, roughly around this time, 6 to 6:30 on Wednesday afternoons. Or you can catch me over on the podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Menopause Conversations. This is Series 5. There are plenty of episodes that I've already recorded in the past. You can go and review some of them as well, have a listen to, there's lots of different things about different symptoms and what you can do about different nutrients. All of that, covered all of them. The theme of this series is going to be all around how you can continue to thrive in your business, in your job as a team leader in this time of life and beyond. And I'm going to go have a few guests as well, where we're going to be talking. I'm going to speak to other business owners, other leaders about how they managed their menopause transition, how it impacted their role and what they did so that they could continue to grow their businesses and lead their team. So hopefully you've enjoyed that. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're live, thank you very much for being here. And I'll be back next week with another episode of the Menopause Conversations podcast. Bye for now.